Do you see what I did there? You might not have. Or maybe you're wondering if it happened at all. Let's roll it back and take a closer look. The quote. The title. Okay. Here we are. We have John Travolta running, then basically the end of the 1981 trailer for Blowout, tagged with the Roger Ebert quote. But, wait for it, the quote is about blow up, not blow out. And your mind is blown. Boom. Of course the quote makes for a versatile logline and would fit a great many films. Still, it seemed appropriate, a bit of misdirection, to begin this curation, for two of her masters. One, a gadgeteer photographing a gadgeteer. The other, a purposeful artist photographing a purposeless one. And both of them auteurs.
Julie, bon, moteur, Pamela 24 première. Allons-y, Alexandre.
I first glimpsed the auteur theory in 1987 when I realized the man who made Scarface also made The Untouchables. So I explored the hell out of Brian De Palma's filmography. I formed the opinion that the films he made between 1980 and 1987 rival any such stretch from any director in history. I discovered his early shorts. I discovered his Red Period. And I discovered Blowout.
What do you think? Keep looking.
De Palma's films just don't look like anybody else's. Critics call them gimmicky. I called them cool. The long takes, the split screens, the diopters, and Blowout is by far his coolest film. You have Danny Zuko, the campy film within a film open. The revolutionary camera choreography. Tony Manero, the watch garage from Russia with Love. All those splits. And Vinny freaking Barbarino.
Great.
Then sometime in 1990 I read Pauline Kael's review of Blowout in an old copy of The New Yorker. She mentioned Blowup and one film led me to the other. The homage to its inspiration.
Fantastic.
Although if truth be told, Blowout is based as loosely on Blowup, as Blowup is on the Julio Cortázar short story the film cites as its source. And obviously Blowup is much more abstruse and ambiguous than Blowout. Still, the films do have a few interesting common threads. And a few interesting differences. Blowup is Antonioni's most commercial film and his first English-language one. It was a huge hit internationally and its contributions to American cinema of the 70s cannot be overstated. On the other hand, Blowout, with its bleak ending, had a rather disappointing release.
Jesus, what a hotshot sailor you are. That's ridiculous. Why don't you grow up and learn a thing, you little sailor boy?
Yeah, well, it's 10 for you, baby, 10.
Hey, what about my $30?
Despite this, Blowout managed to influence a generation of filmmakers, I believe, because American audiences had never seen anything quite like it in a conventional theater, much like Jane Birkin's Beaver, pardon my language, but those are Jack Nicholson's words, not mine. You see, Blowup is often credited as having created an appetite for European cinema in America. And in the mid-70s when that appetite seemed sated, Nicholson theorized, quote, all the American audience's supposed greater education, through Jules and Jim, 8½, to more sophisticated formal approaches to viewing narrative, seems to have evaporated. It now seems that the reason for the success of Blowup was that it included the first beaver shot in a conventional theater. End quote. It's true that both films contain a fair amount of nudity, but flesh is just one of the many colors dancing about on the palettes of De Palma and Antonioni, these two sons of Italy, these descendants of Da Vinci, and heirs to Titian with their delicate black and white brushwork on color canvas. Both directors play rather patent games of red light green light, and De Palma's patriotic mise-en-scène is almost palpable.
Want some coffee?
Huh? You want some coffee?
Good morning.
But, ultimately, in both Blowout and Blowup, it is only in black and white, only in art, that we may find truth. such that it is.
Hey, babe, listen, this is the biggest thing since the Zapruder film.
And in further pursuit of the transcendentals, these self-reflexive ruminations on the nature of film have at their core almost identical sequences in which the protagonist composes a narrative of the murder by reconstructing the media as a metaphor for the filmmaking process and how photography and sound recording and video and audio editing can recreate significance from the raw stock of reality. But for all their visual artistry, both films take great care with sound and silence.
Have a listen to this.
Except for the credit sequence, all of the music in Blow Up is diegetic. From the Yardbirds to the American jazz pianist score for the Italian director.
Reg, let's have some noise, can we? Right.
The first 12 minutes of Blowout are similarly diegetic. There is no music until after the crash, when the Italian violinist score for the American director floods in. But, as is often the case, the most powerful scenes are the quietest. Just as sound literalized film, transformed it from a subjective to an objective medium, in both Blowout and Blow Up, the silence serves to reverse that literalization and restore much of the metaphor lost since cinema's early days. Jean-Marie Straub quoted D.W. Griffith as saying, "What modern movies lack is the beauty, the wind in the trees." Antonioni and De Palma regarded Griffith's words, and crafted hauntingly beautiful films that rustle and whisper. These whispers warn of our malleable perceptions, and also, as David Allen Mellor puts it, the mutability of evidence. In both films, the central characters experience hallucinatory flashbacks whose fantastic nature bespeak an internal focalization. Just listen. Can you hear the susurrations? You are not alone. The photographer's flashbacks are triggered by his photographs and are auditory, while the sound man's are triggered by his sound recordings and are optical. Thus, especially in Blowout, which often focalizes from zero to internal in the blink of an eye, these glimpses into the character's psyche are clear indications that the authors deliberately structure narratives with points of view that reflect the subjective perceptions of their protagonists.
Shit.
And don't get it twisted, kid, subjectivity is at the center of both films. That is, auditory, optical, and cognitive subjectivity.
They don't mean anything when I do them. Just a mess. Afterwards, I find something to hang on to. Like that. Like that leg. And it sorts itself out. And adds up. It's It's like finding a clue in a detective story. Don't ask me about this one, I don't know yet.
Can I buy it?
Although Antonioni was ultimately inviting audiences to question their perceptions, while De Palma asked only that they question everything else.
Well, that is what happened. I mean, that is the truth, isn't it?
What difference does that make to you?
In Antonioni's Swinging London, the question is, was the body real? Even more, what is real? And in De Palma's highly political post-Watergate Philadelphia, the answer is, it doesn't matter. Even if you got it on tape.
What do you think the rest of the mix? Well, okay, we bring on the beginning, you know, when he from the footsteps.
It's a good scream. It's a good scream.